we are going to do this as best as we can to try to get a good understanding of how to do this on the graphing calculator. So this is kind of a trial by fire type of situation. So you can see I have my graphing calculator pulled up to where you guys can see it. And I have your notes that you have in your packet also pulled up. So it shows kind of a step-by-step screenshot. Now, I don't know how easily you guys can see these things on my screen right now. So I'm going to walk you through what exactly you're going to do. Okay, hopefully this video along with the notes will help you, and then we'll walk through a couple together. So you can kind of see up here, there are basically 3 steps that you're going to do. Put the equations in to your y1 and y2. Use the button sequence, second trace 5, which I will walk you through, and it kind of points out. So first thing you're going to do is go, you have to follow my cursor, the y equals button. Look at my calculator. This top left button, the very top left button, is your y equals button. This is where you put all your equations in. So you can see if I click that, it brings me to a screen where it lists a whole bunch of y equals. And that's where I can list numerous, like 10 different equations if I wanted to. All these 5 buttons at the top right under the screen are basically your graphing buttons. Okay, so after I put my 2 equations in there, I'm going to hit the sequence second trace 5. So second is this blue button on my screen. That's the second button. Trace is one of these top 5 buttons up here. So essentially I'm doing second calc because in blue it says calc, and then I hit the number 5 down here. What second calc 5 is you're finding an intersection of where 2 lines cross, because that's what we want to do with systems of equations. You want to see where the 2 lines cross each other. After you get those in, then you're going to hit enter, enter, enter. And I'll tell you why you want to do that in just a minute. So what we see here are 2 different equations. I'm going to look at number 1. Zoom in here. And the reason that we want to be able to do this on the graphing calculator, because you're thinking, well, that's not too bad. I can graph these by hand, but sometimes they intersect at really ugly places, or sometimes they aren't very friendly to graph. Like, let's be realistic. This is a pain in the butt to try to graph with a y-intercept of negative 5.5. So we don't want to have to deal with that. So this first equation is the one that we're going to put in as our y1. So I'm going to go to my calculator. I hit y equals, which I'm already there, obviously. I'm going to hit negative 1, hit enter. That takes me down to my second equation. That's this one right here. And I'm going to put this in as y2. Now remember, when you put them in, you're only putting this part of it in. So the only thing that you need here to enter is, let me widen this, is the equation itself, because the y1, y2, y3, those are represented already. All these are represented all the way down on your equation or on your calculator screen. So I'm going to go ahead and type this in. So parentheses, negative 3 divided by 2 is how I represent my fraction. The newer calculators, I think it shows you more like in a fraction format. And then minus 5.5. So you can see on my screen that I've typed my 2 equations in. And then as it said on the previous page, on these notes right here, your second set of directions, I'm looking at this second step right here. So now I'm going to hit second. I'm going to hit the trace button up here. And then I'm going to go to select number 5. So I just have to push the 5 button where it's going to do the intersection. Okay, so now it's going to show you the graphs. All you've basically done is given your calculator the directions. It is super important that you now do this. Enter, enter, enter. Now, effectively, your calculator is currently asking you a question down here in the bottom left corner. It says first curve, and then it's going to say second curve, and then it's going to say guess, all with question marks. And that's what the enter, enter, enter is for. You're basically telling your calculator, this is the first equation, this is the second equation, and you want it to take a guess. So I'm going to push enter, enter, and then enter again. And so what it gives you now, as it shows you, it's pointing down in the corner, is it gives you the equation, or sorry, it gives you the two values. Now look, I'm going to highlight it on the screen down here. These down here, sorry, not on the actual screen, but on your notes screen, this is giving your X value and your Y value. So it says Y, it says that your X is -3. So your solution, how about I don't use a highlighter? So your solution for this is going to be X is -3, comma, Y is -1. And that's your solution for that one. And we can do the same thing and practice this next one. So I'm going to go ahead, go back to Y equals, hit clear to delete the first one. I'm going to put my 5 plus your X button if you're not sure. This is always your variable button right up here next to the alpha key. So 5 plus X. And regardless of your variable, you have to use that button. And then you have parentheses -1/2, so -1 divided by 2. And then X minus 12. Get your other equation in there. You can hit graph if you wanted to. It's going to show you the picture and that's it. But it will allow you to directly go from, so I'm back to Y equals. You can go right from putting the equations in to hit second, calc, number 5, and then hit enter, enter, enter. And what's happening, my calculator doesn't like it because, let me hit quit, because my intersection is off of the screen. You can see it's over here. So we're going to move out a little bit. I can do it one of two ways. I can hit the window button and change. I know I need to go a little bit further on the x-axis. This is showing you it goes from -10 to 10 on the x. I'm going to just adjust it manually to go to -15 on my x-axis and see if that helps me. I think sometimes your calculator gets a little picky and it wants to be able to see that the graphs cross within its window frame. Otherwise, it might be a pain in the butt. So let's try it now. So obviously, we can see right here where my cursor is that it's crossing. So it's not an issue of whether it crosses or not. So second calc 5, and then enter. Sorry, the calculator on the computer is kind of slow. And then enter again. And there you go. You can see that it's definitely crossing. In fact, it crosses at -11.3 repeating, put the little rep attend, comma, -6.3 repeating. And that's your solution. All right, let's try another one. Go to your Y equals. And just real quick, let me say, since I did mess with the window, there's a really easy way to readjust it back to normal. If you hit zoom and choose option 6, that takes you back to a standard window. So now it's going to readjust to where I can't see it again. And if I click on the actual window button right here, this shows me what my dimensions are. So you can see it's back to -10 by 10, both on the X and the Y. So again, that's zoom and then the 6 option. All right, so let's hit back to Y equals. Let's clear out number 2 and put in 3 plus 4x and 6 plus 8x. And then go ahead and hit zoom, or sorry, second, trace, and then number 5. And then on your calculator by hand, you might be able to do it a little faster. You can see if your calculator is thinking right here in the top right corner, it doesn't like you to interrupt its thinking. So just enter, 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 and you can see that your answer is going to be -0.75, comma 0. So this is super helpful when they're crossing at really ugly places. All right, last one. So Y equals And then you're going to put in, well, let's clear this one out. And we're going to put in x minus 3. Hit enter, clear this one out, and put in x plus 2. Now, second Calc 5, and you should do, well, it's got to graph them. And so hopefully you noticed right when you put the equations in, maybe you did, maybe you didn't, those two things that I just highlighted. What do those two things mean? Think about it. If both of them are x just by themselves, then doesn't that mean that, I always do that, the lines are parallel? Because they have the same slope. I'm just pointing this out because their slopes are equal. But let's say you didn't notice that and you're just like doing your thing and you put them into here and you graph it and you hit second Calc 5, like my screen's ready for me to say enter, 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 enter. You're going to get this message. Boom, there's that. Now we got that same message on number 2, but it was pretty obvious to see that on number 2, our lines were doing something like this. It just happened to be off of our calculator screen was like, whoops, let's go a little bit. Our calculator screen was like this, so we couldn't see it. The calculator likes to be able to see where they cross. Now, your intuition, if you look on this one, was that we had our calculator screen like this, but our two lines were definitely going more like this to imply that they're parallel. You need to understand that these have the same slope. So when it gives me this error message, it's confirming that there should be no solution because the lines are parallel. Okay, so we can go back and when you get that message, you're like, oh, let me double check. You have to hit enter right now, by the way. And then when you look at the graphs, you go, oh, those two kind of look parallel. Look at your equation and you go, yep, definitely have the same slope. So that should do it. Okay, so hopefully that gives you enough information for you to be able to get through doing this on the graphing calculator and help you understand what those things meant.